Welcome back, Tuesday lunchtime. Now, at the end of December 2017, South Africans watched the ANC's 54th National Elective Conference at Nasrec here in Johannesburg. Now, in the run-up to the leadership elections, it became abundantly clear that two factions were emerging. The Zuma faction that backed Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma for ANC president. The other faction, as we all well know, was called CR17 and backed the now President Cyril Ramaphosa to lead the party. Now, a former student activist and ANC member, Oscar van Heerden, now a top-rated academic, was part of a team drafting resolutions. He's written a compelling insider's view called 2 Minutes to Midnight. Will Ramaphosa's ANC survive? I think it is a pertinent question, given the COVID-19 catastrophe that not only South Africa, but the rest of the world faces. Van Heerden joins us now on Tuesday lunchtime. Oscar, good afternoon to you. You write at the end of the conference, after that 179-vote victory, you could sleep easier. Is that still the case, I wonder, 3 years on?
I think it is. I do think it is the case. I mean, of course, one could never have anticipated this pandemic, COVID-19, that has just created havoc, both socioeconomically, but also in terms of the economy of the country. And so, you know, unfortunately, the book doesn't cover the pandemic, but it does speak towards the end, what I refer to as part 3. It does ask the question, what kind of leadership can we expect from Cyril Ramaphosa, particularly in terms of two things. One is the state of the economy, which, as you know, prior to COVID was already quite weak, was not growing sufficiently, and was now downgraded by the ratings agencies. And then to slap COVID-19 on top of that, it makes for a very, very dire situation. But I do say that he's pragmatic. He is a manager. The same way in which he dealt with the negotiations in the early 90s. He's very pragmatic in his approach, and we've seen some of those qualities coming forward, even in the management of this pandemic.
You use the word pragmatic, you use the word manager. You also say that he is a formidable strategist. We know that. How are those skills then being used to manage the situation that we currently find ourselves in?
Well, I think you and the viewers would agree that firstly, the way he has managed to take us all on board, very transparent with the process, keeping us up to date with all the conversations and discussions that's happening at the Command Council as well as Cabinet. So he likes the approach of consultation and taking everyone along with him. And I think that has been very good. Secondly, he has taken advice because this is a health pandemic, a health crisis. He has taken advice. He is able to listen to the experts, to the scientists, to the medical professionals, and taking his cue from them and not wanting to make up his own mind about approaches, as we've seen in the cases of Boris Johnson, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Modi in India, and indeed Trump in the United States.
But also he is accused of inertia. There is growing disgruntlement. We have just reported, for instance, on the restaurant industry taking to the streets tomorrow. To use your analogy then, Oscar van Heerden, is he starting to run out of time?
I think so. I think he is starting to run out of time. And I do think that it is reflecting very badly on him and his leadership and indeed his executive or his cabinet when they cannot take on, for example, the taxi industry. And so the question that I have is that in as much as I argue in the book that we are in good hands, and if given the right time and the right support, Cyril is the person who would be able to take us through this crisis. However, difficult decisions are going to have to be made, and we cannot kowtow every time to industries like the taxi industry, because today it's the taxi industry, tomorrow it's what?
We know that the ANC's NGC, I think it was slated either for July or for August, has been postponed. You write in the book that there was talk then, had this gone ahead, of, and I quote, pummeling Cyril Ramaphosa into pulp. How does that then impact on the 2 minutes to midnight scenario? How tenuous is his position?
Quite tenuous. I mean, I do conclude the book by saying that there are two fundamental crises that the president is expected to address. The one, as I said, was the economy, and that is an ongoing task. But the second one was the infighting within the ruling party, within the governing party, the ANC. If he doesn't get that under control, then it brings everything else into the balance. And I make the point, as you rightfully point out, Jeremy, that as we go towards this NGC, which is a constitutional it has to happen between the elective conferences. And so even though during COVID it has now been postponed, because it was, as you say, supposed to take place July, August, it would probably take place, if not later in the year, if the situation permits, probably at some time in the first half of next year. But it will happen. And I make the point that those radical economic transformation types, now under the leadership of Isma Khashule, will indeed still very much come to that conference wanting to teach Ramaphosa a lesson, not wanting to accept the fact that they had lost the elective conference, and in some way try and bring his leadership and his leadership style into question.
In fact, you call them sinister forces. So with this millstone of the pandemic around his neck, how does he deal with it?
Well, I think at the moment, the practical approach is that he has concentrated on the pandemic. It's about saving lives. It's about ensuring livelihoods. And I think on that score, the president has really been exemplary. The introduction of the 350 Rand special grant for those that are in distress, the food parcels, and all the other regulations that have been put in place is geared towards trying to save lives, keep the death toll at a minimum, as well as ensuring livelihoods. Of course, there will always be arguments pro and con these initiatives, and not everything goes smoothly, but that has been his practical approach. And I'm cautioning that he is so focused on serving the people that he is actually losing his eye on the ball with regards to what's going on in the party. And I can assure you, Jeremy, these sinister forces are not sitting idly by, because some of them are facing jail time. They have been complicit in state capture and in corrupt practices, and they know that the NPA is coming for them. And so their thinking is that if we can regain state power, if we can regain the control over the judiciary, over the security cluster, we could potentially stay out of prison. And so they are very, very geared towards that.
The book is called 2 Minutes to Midnight. Will Ramaphosa's ANC survive? Oscar van Heerden, thank you very much.